Well, hello, Move More, Learn More community. We have quite a treat for us today. We are talking with Emily Daniels. She created the Regulated Classroom. I have the book right here. I can highly recommend it. It is so edible. There are things that you can absolutely put into place for yourself, for your children, for your school, for your home, like right away.
Hmm.
So, Emily, thank you for being with us.
Lynn, thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited for this conversation.
I know we've already been on for half an hour having so much fun talking. Now we gotta bring all your wisdom to everyone, okay? First, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So, I am the author and creator of The Regulated Classroom, and I'm always proud to say that I formerly was a school counselor for many years and worked in schools and did what I needed to do in those environments to really try to support students the best that I could. And to also, I always saw myself as somebody who was also a liaison just as much for the teachers, meaning I worked closely with teachers in consultation around how to best support students. So I would say that my life career has really been about being an advocate for
Mm.
children, but in a way that recognizes the importance and the role that an adult plays in the life of a child.
Mm. All right, so school counselor, just give us a little bit of the journey. I always ask when I speak, I ask the whole audience, everyone, I want you to write down a little of your journey and how did you end up here? So what was your journey?
Yeah. So my journey was that in 2015, excuse me, 2016, I went to a conference in Boston. It's Bessel van der Kolk's annual psychological trauma conference that he hosts every year. I went because at the time I was actually working at the high school level as a student assistance counselor. And in that role, my primary responsibility was to provide individual and group counseling to students that struggled with substance misuse. And I kept hearing a lot of narrative around trauma in my work with those students. And I kept hearing from their mental health clinicians about their trauma responses. And I had no idea what anybody was talking about when they said these things. And so I begged, borrowed, and stole to attend a trauma conference, my first in 2016, and got there and had such a light bulb moment. Like, really, it was my first exposure to how the body works in concert with the brain to primarily protect us.
Mhm.
When push comes to shove, our body does a lot to really protect us, and it was game changing for me in my professional and personal life. And I tried to bring back some of what I learned there, and then I went on to get more training and tried to bring it back to my high school and more importantly, bring it back to the practice with my students. And I just met roadblock after roadblock
Mm.
from colleagues and staff members and the administration about trying to practice from a trauma informed place. And so I tendered my resignation and I left my position and I started my own trauma informed consulting business called at that time Hear This Now. So that was how I got to eventually the regulated classroom was the work that I was doing as a trauma informed schools consultant in the late 2010s, which even sounds weird to say.
Oh, I know, because we feel like we're 30. I understand.
Right?
I'm taking a course right now. I'm taking a ton of CE right now. And yesterday, in one of the courses, they said transformation is always preceded by disruption.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like, then you have a choice. You can fight, flight, freeze,
Right?
acquiesce. And you said, no, man, I'm making some changes. That
Yeah.
is so exciting.
Yeah,
The
it
book
was.
is
It really
really,
was.
the book is really, really good too. The way that
Thank you.
you organized it. Now, you created the regulated classroom, and then you have some really important concepts. Can you help educate us on, what are the foundational concepts?
Yeah. So the reason why I created the regulated classroom which is a framework. It's a way to think about co-regulation between adults and children and adults and students.
Mhm.
And the reason why I created it was because when I was teaching educators about trauma and stress and how it impacts the developing body and brain,
Mhm.
they kept saying to me, like, I love this information. This makes so much sense about the challenges that I experience and that my students experience, but I don't know what to do. Like, this
Mhm.
isn't like the information and the science is helpful, but it doesn't really tell me what I should be doing differently.
Mhm.
So I created the framework and I created the guidebook because I wanted to give teachers language, and more importantly, ideas for action about like what could they actually do to change their experience with their students. Because,
Mhm.
anybody who works in schools today will tell you that it's a very stressful experience to be in the classroom, that students today show up and they are not nearly developmentally mature enough to engage with the curriculum that we have at hand for them. And so it creates a lot of dysregulation in the classroom, both for the adult and for the child. And so, kids are struggling. The adults are struggling as a result of the fact that the kids are struggling. And so I really felt like I need to create a resource that addresses both of these things simultaneously. And in my, which continues to be an ongoing inquiry of learning, my own personal inquiry of learning, I discovered the science of the nervous system, and in
Mhm.
particular polyvagal theory and the work of Dr. Stephen Porges, and that really gave me like a guiding set of tenets to help me understand like, oh, okay, I gotta help educate educators about how the nervous system functions, and then what
Mhm.
are things they can do to reset their nervous systems in the context of the experiences they share with their students.
Wow, just wow. I've got a beautiful friend, Ashley Azell, and she's a third grade. I think she's in K now, but she was a third grade teacher when I met her at a school I used to consult to. It was like a lab school. I could practice my activities there. They're wonderful people. My friend
Mm,
Milano helped me get in there. Anyway, Ashley is very forward thinking. And so she was like, Lynn, we have to take your cognitive and self-regulation concepts and we've got to put them in the classroom. So
mm,
we created some activities and a little guide, and she did that a little bit. But in all honesty, I feel like my stuff is very easy to apply in a clinic, and
mhm,
your stuff is very easy to apply in a school. So
mm.
after this call, I would be texting her and say, Ashley, we started in 2018, and I'm going to say, I found your solution. She's going to be very happy.
Well, I mean, that's my hope. That's my intention with this particular resource is a couple different things. So first off, when I teach educators about the nervous system, I do it in such a way that I'm actually asking them to dial into their own experiences, their own inner experiences, like their body sensations and their body experiences, their visceral experiences on the inside of their body,
Right,
because that's the best way for them to begin tracking their nervous system state. I teach them that there's basically three primary states of the nervous system: sympathetic state, and then parasympathetic state, which is either dorsal or ventral. And
right.
these three states represent two states of defensiveness or protection and one state of regulation. And so what I try to help them understand is that when they go into states of protection or get dysregulated, that has a contagious effect on those that they're with. So if they're with students who are struggling, and they themselves are dysregulated, that only amplifies dysregulation for both entities. When they use a practice from my guidebook, they're going to experience a reset of that nervous system state for themselves, and their students are going to experience that as well in their own nervous system. So now we're able to reset towards co-regulation and actually getting back to a safe state in the body and a more regulated state in the physiology. And when that occurs, then you've got this sort of pro-social condition. Well, not only you have pro-sociality, that's the language
Right,
that Stephen Porges uses to describe. You've
right.
got people available, children are available for learning, and the teachers are available for empathy and compassion and inspirational delivery of content. Like they are
Mhm.
their best selves when they're regulated, just like the
Mhm.
kids are their best selves when they're regulated as well. So that's what I'm really trying to do with this resource is teach teachers in very simple ways. And I teach them about you want to do these things in microdoses. So you want to
Right,
do these
right,
things for
right.
like 30 seconds,
I
60
agree.
seconds, 90 seconds, nothing too long.
Yeah,
And you want to do them with great frequency and repetition.
I agree completely. We have a whole schedule of activities that we give to the people who attend our courses, and I saw you have something similar in
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
Okay,
You dose them in as a form of actually like prevention, really,
right.
because we know that like we can't expect our students to just be sitting. I mean, that's why I think Lynn, you and I have such like
Mhm.
alignment in our work because there is so much more that we better understand now
Right, and
about
we
the
did.
importance and the need for movement in the school day.
But
But
there's a combination here that makes me want to jump out of my chair. And the combination is that we used to get pure dyslexia referrals, pure ADHD referrals. Then came autism. And
Mhm,
now we have multiple, diagnoses for the children, which makes 30%, an estimated 30% of the children in our classrooms neuro unique,
mhm,
many unidentified. And
mhm.
so we we are required to dose this. We have no other choice now.
Yep.
And the happy thing about it is that if we do dose with cognitive strategies, motor strategies, language strategies, strategies, and your self-regulation strategies, you're actually building a better brain.
Oh,
And some
yeah.
of those kids won't have to go to therapy. I'll never have
Right.
to meet them.
Right.
And so I was just going to, I mean, like, this makes me so excited. I'm going to take my shoes off and ground myself. I'm like, oh my gosh,
No,
right?
so okay, so I love so much what you're saying right now. And I don't want to get into controversial issues per se, but what you're talking about in terms of the commonality now of whether you call it neurodivergence or
Yeah.
whatnot is that's because we live in truly such different times. I mean, this is a big part of the work we just are doing in our new resource called the Early Years, but it's really digging into why our children challenged in ways that with greater frequency, in the population than they used to be.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love so much about the work of Dr. Porges is that he says, as humans, we are social creatures, we're social beings. And in order to bring about our full social capacities, we need very specific kinds of social experiences. And the
Mm,
reality of it is that even when you just look at the landscape of childhood today, and of course, this got way amplified by COVID and the
yes.
pandemic and lockdown and social isolation.
And digital.
Well, that's the thing is that
Mm.
I was in a training. I don't mean to jump ship for a second here, but let me just give you this little anecdote. So on Friday, I was in Pennsylvania training with an early childhood center that is actually kind of like your clinic, where all the students that are there, all the children that are there are identified this or that. And I was doing some of the practices from our early years guidebook. And they said, some of the staff that were there were in their late teens, early 20s. Again, this is ECE folks. And so we were doing things like duck, duck, goose and patty cake and just some other little, like, sort of traditional old school forms of play, if you will. They had no idea what these things were. They'd never heard of Ring Around the Rosie. They didn't know what hopscotch was. They didn't know what patty cake was, Miss Mary Mac. All these very long-standing traditional sensory motor forms of play that are dynamic, socially dynamic in nature. They
Mhm.
did not have those experiences.
Mhm.
And so you have a whole generation of young parents and young providers who have not had these requisite play experiences or just social experiences to help them fully develop social capacities too. So it's really interesting when we look at it through the lens of how modern life is influencing
Yes.
the experiences that we have. And if we think that it isn't, we're kidding ourselves, and we adapt to our most frequent repetitive experiences. And, you know, I always say, and Lynn, I'll just say this and then I'll get off this tangent,
No,
but
I don't think this was a tangent at all. This is so important.
I feel like, and you can tell me whether or not you feel like this, but I feel like I grew up in a generation where we thought that genetics was everything. We thought DNA was the answer to every condition in human experience. Like if
Mhm.
you were going to be dyslexic, it was in your DNA. And if you were going to be autistic, it was in your DNA. And
Mhm.
one of the things that no one is out there saying loud enough, at least I don't feel like they are, is that, gene expression is something that comes about as a result of our lived
Environment.
experiences,
Yeah.
right? So it's like genes get turned on or turned off based on our experiences, our repetitive, frequent experiences. So if we have propensities or inclinations or, yeah, tendencies in some way, genetically speaking, that's only going to be a vulnerability for us if we've been deprived of certain kinds of experiences or haven't had either be deprived of or haven't had sufficient exposure to. Do you know what I mean? So I say all of this because anxiety is the number one thing that I deal with in my trainings. I'm dealing
Right.
with anxious adults coming in who are trying to support children who have, various challenges. And people will say to me all the time, well, I have anxiety because my mom had anxiety. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, that's actually not the case. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like you might have had more, proclivity or
Mhm.
propensity towards being an
Mhm.
anxious individual, but I can tell you right now, it's probably living in the conditions that you lived in as a result of your parent being anxious, that
Yeah.
you've developed very similar ways of being in the world. But I say all of that because what I'm trying to provide in the regulated classroom and with the early years, and we're trying to provide sort of, if you will, a recipe or a formula for very specific qualities of experience that we can bring about with our students or with our children in order to help us enable our fullest social capacities. Does that make sense?
So this is the thing that brings me to, because we're approaching the end here. What that brings me to is if I introduce this book to like my friend Ashley as an example, she needs to hear you. I'm having this experience. I'm reading a lot right now. I had to consume a lot of research, 300 articles for the book. And it's way better for me if I can hear the person. I go to their talk. Do you have like any audio casts or video casts that I could link to? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so a couple different things. One is we try to do a lot with our social media. We put a lot out there in terms of sort of like this understanding that I'm describing right now. We put that out there in small bits and people can see things there. But we also have a community of practice that's online, and in there we house our monthly webinars that we do free and live once a month. Every third Tuesday of the month, we have a free
Okay.
live cast of a webinar that people can join or they can watch the recording of. And just last week, I asked Emma to finally go in and update. We had an old YouTube channel that I had like get deserted, like a 7-Eleven. And we're actually
Mhm.
bringing that back. And so now we have housed all of our webinars that we've recorded, at least in the last year, on various topics. And they're short, they're only 30 minutes. We might talk about the power of play or behavior through the lens of the nervous system, but you can certainly find us on YouTube and find our channel, the Regulated Classroom, there to look at things. But even if you just Google Regulated Classroom, you will find something under videos where you'll hear me, talking about this sort of thing.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow. I cannot thank you enough. It's 7:46. I feel like I took the Concorde to Paris and back
I
just
know,
in
right, Lynn?
45
Thank you
minutes.
so much for
Amazing.
this opportunity. This was
Yeah, I'm
amazing.
really pleased. And I'll look forward to talking with you again. And I'm gonna talk about you, but we're also gonna reach out to you to see how can we get you to Phoenix.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. I would love that. That would be amazing. Thanks so much for this opportunity.
All right.
Great to
All
chat.
right. To our community, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, Emily.
Bye, Lynn.